Happy birthday to you.
It's a really slow version.
I told you we weren't going to do it well. Birthday to
Everyone's
you.
going to turn the podcast off by the time.
Happy
birthday, Flo's mom. Happy birthday to you. Yeah, that's going to sound great.
That's perfect.
She
will.
Yeah.
Why was it chopped and screwed? That was the slowest happy birthday ever.
Yo, be brave, bold robot. You still want us?
Yeah. That was throwing down hard on
We're
those
just
guys.
getting started. Yeah.
Also, happy birthday, Gail. We love you.
70.
I haven't met
happy
you, but I'm
birthday,
sure you are
Mom.
lovely.
Yeah.
Yes, my mom actually, when the podcast was retooled, we listened when she was here at Thanksgiving. That was when I did my first big binge. So she was like, wait, what's going on with the mayor? And, she had all these questions because she doesn't live in Sacramento. She lives in New Jersey. So she had no clue who the players were, but she loved the podcast. So happy 70th birthday, Mom.
I love it. I remember I met her at Thanksgiving and I immediately apologized profusely for all of the swears.
You did.
That to be fair,
like,
I don't think that's my mom's favorite part of the show either.
It's not.
It is my mom's favorite part
All
of
right,
the
all
show.
right.
Is it?
Cool.
It's the
So
swearing and flow is my mom's favorite.
Yeah. Well, Flo's a constant for most moms. Yeah.
Yeah. You score really high with moms in general.
Yeah.
I have to
moms.
assume that includes your own.
The mom
I think she likes me.
All right. Right.
That's cute.
All right, you guys want to do this?
Sure.
Let's do it.
Can't wait to do
All
it.
right.
Voices, the things they said. Voices, some from those dead. All the voices heard. Voices, things we say. Voices, they're in your head. All the voices heard.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, God.
You've got Kempa.
And Skylar.
I can't do it. And also Shannon.
And Flo.
All
That was
right.
nice.
I'm
So we've got a full
Party
house
pooper.
tonight. And yeah. But how is everyone?
Mm.
Yeah.
Is anyone else having a horrible experience with the pollen that's outside?
I was
allergy-
about 3 weeks ago. It was bad, but I'm okay now.
Motherfuck, my allergies
I don't
are
want
terrible.
to jinx the pollen karma, so I refrain from commenting on allergies in Sacramento.
I spend about
enough.
3 days a
Okay,
week in
okay.
Capitol
I appreciate
Park,
that.
and so I think all the pollen already just lives inside me. So I think,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, there's something in there that's growing that you're allergic to for sure. There's
Mhm.
like how many hundreds of different trees are in
I
that
think my
park?
body just has given up though, like, histamine wise. It's like, you know what? You're all part of the body now. Come on in. Like, let's do this.
Could
So
be worse.
hospitable.
I've been having a tough time with all the cloud cover, man. I was kind of in summer mode and I was not ready to pull back out of summer mode, and have not been appreciative of having to, even though the rain has been kind of nice, I will say.
Got to get yourself one of those happy lights. I love my happy light.
Oh, some vitamin D.
Oh, like a
yeah.
full spectrum light bulb?
Is that what it's called in science? Sure. That's the one.
That like you're talking about for like seasonal affective disorder?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I have
all
one
right.
of those.
I'll get one of those then. Thanks,
The
guys.
SADs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's helpful.
It
I've got
helps.
a portable one and just a stationary one that sits at my desk. And the folks at work sometimes ask me if I can turn the sun off because it's so bright.
That's funny.
I was gonna say, how is it you just have it on your desk at work, or
Yeah, it's something like you only need to have the light on for like 30 minutes to have the full benefit of it. But I tend to just, like in the wintertime, I just plug it in and leave it on all day. I have one coworker that will like come up and just stand in front of it, which I think is really cute. Yeah, so I just have it up at my desk and try not to look directly at it because it burns my eyes.
It's extremely bright. Nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
It's a nice thing, actually. I found using it, having it on while I nap, because then I don't even have to think about that I'm like getting the benefit of it.
Oh.
So you have it at your desk, but it also works when you nap.
I have one at home too.
Oh, you have two of them. Okay.
You're trying
That
to
makes
bust me
more
out
sense.
as someone
Of
who
course
naps
you
at
have
work.
and one at home, right?
Hey, look. No judgment here.
Everybody I know who has one like swears by it, but I wasn't sure exactly, how they were using it. Like, do you pick a time where you're like getting your light treatment, or do you do it like you do and just kind of use it as a light around the house?
Yeah,
That's
I
pretty
think
cool.
there's sometimes when I just like do the required half an hour, but just have it on all the time. Then everybody can come over and
OD on that vitamin D. Yeah.
I need it. I crave it. I'm wild for it.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the D right now, and I'm loving it.
Gotta tell you, I'm loving it.
Well, let's get started.
Love the D.
So to begin, this week there was a special election, a congressional election here in California, the 25th district. Now we're going to talk a lot about this and we're going to have a lot of opinions, but I think the first thing to remember about this election is that, like, A, it's a special election, so those are always going to have low turnout. B, it's in the middle of a global pandemic, and that's a fairly unprecedented thing in politics. So, like, as much as we're going to be, throwing out some hot takes, like, there are no real precedents to this. So the outcome of it really, the binary outcome, it was going to land on one of two sides, and there's not too much we can glean from it. So the race was California District 25, Congressional District. That was won in 2018 by Katie Hill, a young woman in her 30s who beat out incumbent Steve Knight, a Republican. Katie Hill was a Democrat who ran on a really progressive platform, Medicare for all type stuff. And she beat him by 9 points, which this is a district that had sort of been in the gray area between Democrat and Republican for a while, but over the years it's increasingly blue now. So she beats him, but then this sort of quote unquote scandal comes out, where it comes to surface that she had been seeing someone outside of the marriage, even though that they had an open marriage and it was all, in agreement between her and her husband. She and this woman were seeing each other. And then also her husband allegedly had been accusing her of seeing one of her male staffers, which she to this day, I think, says was not ever happening. But photos of her were released naked, and just the general, I think, pressure of all of that kind of resulted in her deciding to leave office, basically. So we had a special election this week. And this was a very weird election, right? I mean, Sky, you and I did an episode a couple months back. We called it Christy Smith Hates Renters. So you're going to know where we're going with this. But the primary had a couple of really interesting people in it. One of them being George Papadopoulos, who was in like trouble for Russia related shit and had the feds looking at him for a while, but the second he got out, he figured he'd go down to the corner of Ventura and LA counties and run for office.
I mean, he's not wrong. Look at the way the government operates. Go for it, man.
And then the other interesting character in this race was Cenk
Uger, yeah. I think it's Cenk
Okay.
Uger.
Cenk Uger, who is the host of the Young Turks, very progressive show, but it pretty much immediately came out that he had said some really problematic, misogynist.
Had like a
things in the
history of
past.
saying shit like
Yeah.
that, right? Yeah, like they had
there's
a
whole
bunch of
highlight
shit on
reel of
him.
it.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, he also was a carpetbagger. He wasn't from that district, and you know, he and George were both kind of coming in from out of the area. Anyway, Steve
That
Knight
was
was
also,
in this.
didn't all that stuff come out? Like, I mean, just this doesn't, I guess, have anything to do with what we're talking about, but like he had just finished endorsing Bernie Sanders for president, I think, when this happened. And then when all that stuff came out, of course, like the moderates were like, haha, see, all people who hate women love Bernie Sanders.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Sick, cool.
And
Thanks,
then
Jink.
I think Bernie had to like say no thank you to
Yeah,
his
he did.
endorsement.
He disavowed the endorsement.
So anyway, so this election, Steve Knight was in it too, but he actually didn't end up in the top two portion of it. It ended up coming down to Christy Smith, a Democrat, and Mike Garcia, a Republican, who has sort of an armed forces background, and he has close ties with former Congress members who were from this district. And Christy, as we know, as sort of folks who have been following her at the state level, she's voted against some very important housing rights bills. On top of that, she is not a Medicare for All Democrat. And she ended up losing this election to him. Where it is right now, I believe, he's got 56%. She's got 44%. I don't know if all votes are counted yet because this was very recently.
I don't think they are, but it's enough that AP called it and she called him to congratulate him. You know,
they did say that there was an unknown number of outstanding ballots to be tallied. So, you know, but I think given what their expected voter turnout is, it's likely that it's early enough to call, or it's not close enough that they feel comfortable calling it.
Okay. So he won by, 12 points in a district that, again, in the most recent sort of breakdown of voter registration in California, this district has increasingly gone blue. It is now Democrats plus 6.6% against Republicans. A Democrat should be able to win this district. Now, again, like would anybody like to talk on like kind of like why this is a weird election and why this might not mean anything?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll go ahead and bust myself out and say that like maybe it's because I'm so knee deep in COVID and other, really pressing issues around the budget. But I honestly didn't even know there was an election yesterday or 2 days ago. Like I had no clue. Granted, I don't live in that district and so couldn't have voted. So please don't at me. But I was not I just was not at all. And so I just wonder how many people were totally not like May 12th is not a day that you're thinking about voting.
Right.
And honestly, I know a few people in Santa Clarita, and I don't recall seeing anything from them social media wise about like, hey, get out and vote. Like, I'm sure they probably did, but it was not top of mind for anybody right now. So I think that's first and foremost, we always have to have an asterisk with everything that comes in 2020 because that's going to be the case, right?
Right. Even if there weren't a pandemic keeping everybody inside their houses, which obviously complicates any election for really obvious reasons. This is like a weird, what I heard somebody call it, I saw somebody call it like a jump ball election, like kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And
we just voted a couple. Like everybody's like, I did that, right? I'm good. I'll see you in November.
Well, I mean, I think to your point, I don't think this was like an election that a million people, like a lot of the people who could vote did. I think it was probably fairly low turnout, it's my understanding that the Democrats are using that to kind of be like, yeah, well, we'll see. Cause these two are about to, that district is going to come back up, and those two are both
in November.
in that
Right.
election. So
yeah, absolutely.
We're about to vote for
over.
this district again,
right?
In a time when like Donald Trump is on the ballot, which the Democrats are feeling confident will likely drive turnout. And this district, like any other in the whole goddamn country, when turnout is up, Democrats win.
And likely the turnout will be even higher because Governor Newsom announced recently that everybody in the state of California is going to be eligible for vote by mail this time,
ballot,
as opposed to it just being the select counties that were part of the pilot. So that's a huge thing as well, just in terms of increasing turnout. We know a few things about turnout. The easier you make it for people to vote in terms of extending the times and mailing ballots and all of that, the more people participate. And we also know that the bigger the election, and what I mean by that is the more people around the country that are voting on that day, the more people show up because you get more media about it, right? Like there are very few people who don't know when we're having a presidential election because the entire country is voting on that day. Right. Fewer people know when we're having a statewide election. Even fewer people remember when we're having a local election because you're just not going to get the same amount of coverage because it doesn't matter to everyone. Case in point, again, busting myself out that I live in California, not in that district, and wasn't even checking, clocking the fact that there was an election coming up. So I think that's the nature of the beast.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think I saw a New York Times needle of death on this, and I looked all over their website.
Exactly.
Well,
it is like the first time, I guess, in that article, Dave, that you shared, first time in 22 years that the California Republicans have captured a congressional seat from the Democrats, which I think is that's the thing being touted by the GOP about.
But that's the asterisk.
GOP wanted that. They did want that storyline. So on the one hand, like you do see that, and you're like, yeah, that sucks. You kind of feel like she should have shored that up. But again, this is a super weird, as both of you have outlined, a very weird election. But the state GOP threw a lot of money and a lot of effort into this one so that they could hold it up as a victory. Like, hey, California is not Democrat country necessarily. California can be won, and we're showing you with this race that we can do it, right? Again, it was a jump ball race, so good for them for winning the jump ball. But once push comes to shove in November, it'll be a tough one. It'll be tough for him though to hold on to the seat. That said, not everyone in politics is smart, and certainly not everyone with money is smart. And all of these moneyed Republicans from around the country who saw him win are going to start throwing more and more money now at his race, and possibly what Patterson, who runs the California GOP, is hoping. Hopefully, they'll start throwing more money into other races with a GOP, person running who they think might have a chance. Because in the last 6 years or so, the National Republican Party has looked at California and they're like, no, we're done there. Like, that's a lose-lose. And as a result, that's why we've seen, effectively, what was it? It was like 46 Democratic seats and 7 GOP seats in Congress in the 2018 election. So that's a wild number. And so, yeah, it is weird that it flipped, but they have so far to go, and all signs point to them not having a future here.
But also demographically, that's exactly what you would expect in a pandemic, right? Like, in terms of the demographics of the Republican Party in California, it is a more affluent party. So if we're thinking about the impact of COVID-19, right, people who are more affluent are more likely to be working from home. And to be older when it comes to the Republican Party as well, which means that they're working from home and likely not doing additional caregiving for young children. So you increase the likelihood in a pandemic of the people who are younger, who have less money, and who are, in the process of kind of trying to figure it out, maybe more likely to be working the lower wage essential jobs, and are just not going to, be caregiving for children. And then you're comparing that to a population that is more likely to be closer to retirement and more affluent. This is the perfect storm to have more Republicans show up to be able to vote.
Well, go ahead, Dave.
Well, even in a D6.6 district, you're absolutely right. And most of this district is LA County. and that area does lean D. But like, you all saw probably President Trump, on Tuesday go on a rant about how there shouldn't be any polling stations open and they shouldn't count. He was saying that because Democrats or left-leaning folks, we tend to do things a little bit later, right? And so when there are polling stations open, the Democrat or the left-leaning person, whoever that might be, it could be left of the Democrat, will do better at that space, right? But this is a pandemic. And a lot of people on the left are like, well, I'm not a moron. I don't want to die. LA County is the epicenter of California's current pandemic issue. So no, I'm not going to risk myself if I can go back out in November. So the Republicans actually won even the same day voting stations as well.
Yeah,
and that would make sense.
Like more than 2-1. Yeah. It was huge. They won it.
It also speaks, I think, to the partisan nature of, unfortunately, of a pandemic, right? We have turned whether or not you wear a mask or not into a political conversation in a way that, like, it's not surprising because we've seen increased polarization over time, but there is an absurdity to the, like, how far we're willing to go with this, right? And now it's like, just doing basic public health protections in a pandemic has a partisan, message associated with it. Nuts.
Yeah.
I think another thing that hurt.
No other country is doing that. Maybe some other countries are, but like for the most part, most countries have a functioning democracy where all parties can come together and be like, listen, here's what we have to do. And we also have to support people enough to provide them with enough money to stay at home so they don't get so anxious that they need to come back to work. And we're not doing any of that. And it just feels like systemically we are broken at every turn right now.
When it comes to framing, I actually do feel like things right now are not getting better. And obviously the aftermath of 9/11 was, initiating wars and doing some really awful things, right, in the name of like American imperialism. But the other side of that is like, I can say compared to what I would expect now, the Islamophobia that happened because other people were taking the message and going in that direction. But like, George Bush was like, look, we need to like not focus on, Muslim Americans, but like the messages that were coming in about people from the top were solid.
No.
We lost Flo.
It's the thing we were always scared of happening.
Flo, we've lost you.
And people kind of, doing all these awful things. I can still see you. I can see you.
Okay, you're back. You're back.
Okay,
Am I back?
So we lost you about 10 to 12 seconds ago, and you were saying, George Bush was saying, don't be anti-Muslim, but the message.
But yeah, and yet and still we saw rampant Islamophobia and hate crimes and all kinds of things happening to, folks who were Muslim in this country. So can you imagine what it would be like to have the exact same set of conditions, except have this administration at the helm, like saying unpredictably but predictably vile things, right? But probably leveling up on even what I can imagine, like how much worse things would be. So there is a level of like, you think it's bad, and I remember how bad we thought that time was, and then you could take the niceties out of it and just make it worse. Yeah. And I'm not trying to gloss over, it was bad in the early aughts, but it would be worse if the overt messaging coming from that office is incredibly problematic and haphazard in nature, right? Like day to day. I mean, just makes no sense.
Like wildly unpredictable to a degree that like level-headed people who are trying to stanch the flow of whatever horrors are about to come out can't, because they literally have no idea what his next move is.
Right.
Because he doesn't know.
Right.
Sort of in this vein, I want to like go back to the race real quick. I think another thing that almost certainly hurt turnout for the Dems and will probably affect this race again in November. And to be fair, like all that, this is the same thing is true in my mind for the presidential election, as well as a great many other races that we're looking forward to in November. But Christy Smith was not a very exciting Democrat. Christy
At
Smith
all.
was kind of a shit Democrat. She was hostile to renters. Like Dave said earlier, she's not into Medicare for all. She's a big, like, oh, we got to support our communities by throwing money at police departments and shit. Kind of person. And so people who do get fired, people who are interested in voting are less interested in that. And that's that in my mind. And I mean, I could talk about this for an hour, but that in my mind is one of the great problems with the Democrats in this era of American politics. And also in my mind, I would say that like sort of the Democrats being willing to get dragged right to that degree is what takes us from George Bush being pretty awful to now it's dialed up to 12 with Donald Trump. And as we keep going and as people like keep voting in and like accepting people with agendas like hers as Democratic agendas, I mean, start thinking about what the next one is, because it's coming. Like whether or not Biden wins or not, like, I don't know. Like she to me is indicative of a deeper issue inside the Democratic Party.
Correct. And I think that's the challenge with her as a candidate, but I think it's also the challenge in general with the party is that if you set yourself up to be not them, then they get to set the tone for
exactly
how far the line goes. And if they just
if that's all you're voting for, then all you have to do is
be a little bit left of where they
exactly.
are. You don't have to be objectively good. I mean, like
you don't have to offer anyone anything. All you have to do is just not go on TV and say blatantly racist shit.
So I might go on a little rant here. But one of the things that we're not seeing that I would wish we would see, because we would see it if it were the shoe were on the other foot and it were another Katie Hill who just lost right now. Nobody is talking. None of the Democratic consultants who the party hires to talk to them about why we won or why we lost, none of them are saying, here are the dangers of running a centrist Democrat right now. Here are the reasons why they might not do well, because they don't excite people, because they don't offer something to look forward to, something that will ameliorate your pain as a constituent, as somebody who lives in this district. And the reason they don't do that is because they aren't usually voting, because these people are so used to these politicians not representing them. So, Democrats, if you want to pay me or anyone else on this show, we'll sit around and tell you the real danger is going after this middle of the party independent person who doesn't exist. This person does not exist, going for that person and leaving behind entire swaths of the California population so that you can sort of try and like hedge your bets. You can only go in one direction or the other. So do you go towards the center where the Republicans will always or almost always outflank you? Or do you go for the voters who really need you and really need help and really could use some, assistance, right? The Democrats used to be the party that actually cared about people. So that's, to me, that is front and center the problem with the Democratic Party in California, especially because they run the show, because now they don't have anybody standing up and speaking out against them. The only people that they do have who have any money are the wildly crazy Republicans out there. And then meanwhile, the sort of like, the Republicans that are never Trump Republicans, right? Like we've got that Mike Madrid, we've talked about him. He started the Lincoln Project with a bunch of other former Republicans, and it's all never Trumpers, and they did like, Morning in America, MOURN. And like these folks are no different than the business Democrats. So like that's our dynamic today. We've got the crazy right. We've got the, Mike Madrid Republicans, Lincoln Project Republicans, the business Democrats that kind of run the Democratic Party, and then this entire swath of space made up of progressives and leftists and all of these disenfranchised voters.
Right, that is ignored time and time again by the Democrats at every opportunity.
They don't know what they are because they don't see themselves being represented in any of this stuff.
If
Okay,
in
rant
case you think that like we're whining about this because we're progressives and we don't feel represented, which I am, because that all of that is true, I believe. But like, so I saw this thing earlier today. This is a thing that The Hill put out yesterday, citing a CNN poll that out of 15 out of a poll conducted recently, out of 15 battleground states, Trump's up by not huge margins, but he's up on across those states. Trump is over Biden 52 to 45% right now. Biden, the same poll has Biden up nationally by 51 to 46. But, you know, from what we know of the Electoral College, this is Arizona, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Mexico, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Wisconsin. And Trump is ahead in all of those states right now.
What's the
according
margin
to
of
this
error?
poll. I'm sorry?
Margin of error?
Let me... 3.7 points.
Okay. And what's the difference?
52 to 45.
Okay. So that's actually within the margin of error, but
It is
still.
within the margin of error. But I mean,
But it's really close.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
way closer
Yeah.
than it should be. And you
Yeah.
have to imagine
He's likely leading in those
Right.
states.
he's likely leading in those states. And that probably, I mean, a lot of people you talk to right now are not happy about Trump. So that all that does to me is really inform you about how people feel nationally about Joe fucking Biden, right?
Yeah, he doesn't excite folks.
And I think the big thing that is often lost is we always do this thing where we focus on likely voters. And I think the likely voter thing is also based on what has happened in every other election before this one, right? So the people who are likely to come out because of what they've seen as a track record and whether or not they think this is worth their time and whether or not they actually see something that they think is going to make a really substantial change in their lives. I think what we all recognize is that when someone has a big impact on you, you're more likely to respond to that thing. And there's a level of loyalty that comes along with that. And that loyalty can even sometimes outlast it, the right kind of duration for it. If you think about like Black folks in the US and the Republican Party, like there are lots of times after 1865 that the party just completely failed them. But that was the party of Lincoln, and they associated that, right, wrong, or indifferent, with the end of slavery. And so when people were able to vote, that's the party they voted for. And I think about people like Jackie Robinson, who was alive even after the parties had switched and continued to be registered as a Republican, not, I think, because he was still aligned with their values, but because that loyalty runs deep.
Right.
And so I just imagine what could happen if the Democrats said, we're going to champion Medicare for all. We're going to do something like you get an entire generation of people who are like, I'm going to be loyal because you saved my life.
Right.
Right. In a way that you can't buy with like cheap slogans, and you can't browbeat people into just going to the center. Like that is a substantive change that makes people say, I'm going to stick with this for a while.
No, 100%.
And that's unfortunately not what Smith is offering. And so that's why this is happening. It's like, it's the middle of a pandemic. I got to go out of my house and figure out how to do all this and pay attention to this. And you offer me nothing inspiring.
She has a chance to change. She can. It like, I don't, I'm not going to hold my breath, but she could, right? And this is the middle of our country's worst pandemic we've seen in at least 100 years. We have entire people, like swaths of people seeing their loved ones die. We have millions of Californians getting pushed off, their medical insurance because they lost their jobs. Medicare for all is the answer here. It is full stop the answer here.
Could not be more obvious that having your health care tied to your employer is not
Right.
worth it.
Yeah.
Right.
They're fucking lobbing it over the plate at like 0 miles an hour. Take a fucking swing at it, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. Well, we should probably take a look at kind of the money Christy takes in and where that's coming from. But to me, it's just blatant. And, especially when you talk about these, like, why would we focus on the youth if the youth never come out to vote. Would those people still say that about like the Latino community? Like, well, the Latinos never come out to vote, so why would we, want to speak to them?
Right. Who
That
cares
sounds
about
pretty
those?
fucking racist, even though that
Right.
like this is a subset of our voters that like really, really is a sleeping giant right now.
Right. I mean, the thing is that, like, dude, this is going to contradict a lot of the things I've said, but people aren't stupid, right? People know when they're getting a deal, but when nobody's offering them a good deal. Like the choices are either complete insane debauchery with Trump, or they're like, oh, let's just go back to when things like mostly sucked, but some stuff was cool before Trump. And it's like, no, what? Like, there's better options, and people are pumped for those options. People want to hear that nobody's fucking serving it up. And then we have elections and like 50% of registered voters go out and vote, and people are like, why did everybody stay home? Like, it's not a fucking mystery. Why don't you fucking offer people something? Give them something to vote for, not just shit to vote against.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a losing strategy to me. And I think, I guess we do keep sort of coinciding this with the Biden campaign. He brought Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez onto this committee, that they're hoping will sort of unify, right, the progressives and wherever in space Joe lives. And to me, that's like, I've lost my train of thought.
Oh, hate when that happens.
It's my Joe moment.
Joe brought AOC on, and to you, it's signaling.
Oh, right. But unless they actually land in the space where folks really, really need them, like, they're not going to excite. Unless they say abolish ICE, they're not going to excite the Latino community. Unless they say Medicare for all, they're not going to excite, like, lower class Americans that are just like beaten down right now, and like scared to death, scared of dying right now. Unless they, say decarceration, right? Unless they go for like getting rid of college tuition, right? Like, I don't see them exciting this large, really, it's a, if not a majority, it's at the very least 40%, something like that, of Americans who are hurting every day and can barely get through this. So to me, it's like, I mean, obviously the ball's in Joe's court, unless the Democrats actually like decide to bring somebody else to the plate, in which case, who knows what the fuck happens there.
But that's like kind of to the point, right? Like, I mean, another thing that Joe Biden recently said is that he thinks we should completely relieve people's rent and mortgage payments, as in not pay them back later. Like, they should just be forgiven in the time being, which to me is like a pretty progressive signal.
Forward. That is what people need right now.
And that's, I've been saying this all along to people accusing me of being like a Bernie shill or whatever. I'm like, it's not Bernie Sanders, it's the issues. And if Joe Biden turns around and is like, you know what, I was wrong, these are important issues, and I'm going to do what I can to see them through, I'll fucking vote for him.
I'm back in Nevada.
Like, yeah, no problem at all with that.
If that happens, yeah.
So, like, I mean, I don't know. Like, yeah, it's not about the guy, but I just need something to vote for. Because I'm not going to vote for somebody just because Trump is bad. I'm sorry, I'm not doing it. That's not how you earn my fucking vote.
I hope Smith takes that to heart, because Katie Hill beat an incumbent Republican by 9 points in 2018. And I think this is a winnable district, and I think she has to get people excited. And I know that, were you Democrats paying me, your real danger is going towards that middle that doesn't actually exist.
Agreed.
Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Shannon, can you talk to us a little bit about, I know that recently the county has been, well, I guess the city has been eyeing the concept of opening up restaurants.
Yes, indeed. So as part of these like stages that were introduced by the governor, Sacramento restaurants are preparing to open and expand to their outdoor dining. So what we're planning for is that restaurants are going to reopen, but they're not going to look the same as they did. The seating that's available is going to be much less. And the problem with that, from the perspective of the business owners and from the perspective of our local electeds, is, well, how the fuck are restaurant owners going to survive? Because they're not going to be able to have enough people in their spaces
to pay their rent and their staff and whatever. Yeah.
Right. So there's a new program that they're hoping to open, which is called
Shannon, what is the name of this program? Because I read it today and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, same Z's. It's called Farm to Fork Al Fresco.
Oh God,
that is maybe the most Sacramento thing I've ever heard. They should put al fresco on that like water tank when you're coming in from.
Yes.
What is that? Like right.
Our next mayor is going to be named Al Fresco.
Dude, yes.
Mayor Fresco.
Albert Fresco.
Oh,
the Fresque.
So yeah. So what does that look like in practice? Well, let me tell you. So the guidelines are saying significant decrease in seating. Let's open up the sidewalks. You know what? On streets that don't have a lot of traffic, let's just close down the street. Or if there's a moderate amount of traffic, let's just cut it down to a 1-lane situation. And people are just in, 107-degree summer in Sacramento, gonna sit outside and eat their food. And it's gonna be great. Steve Hansen, friend of the Master of Crows. Been a
while.
Was a
caw?
It has been a while. He, of course, loves this. He loves this plan because he thinks that it gives restaurateurs some hope, and also the public security in knowing that the city is thinking ahead. I love this about this reporting, that Steve Hansen thinks that the public has some security in knowing that the city is forward thinking, because they're going to go ahead and open up the sidewalks and the streets to the restaurant owners. Are you fucking kidding me? So we don't, we actually don't know, as far as I know anyway, there's no like set plan for when this is going to roll out. They do want to assure us that downtown streets will likely not be closed, but maybe areas of like 12th and 13th streets that have more pedestrian areas will be considered for this.
Right.
Farm to Fork al fresco.
Yeah.
Dude. So anyway, yeah, so that's where we're at. And the mayor says that he personally can't wait to relax on a warm night with the Delta breeze and enjoy a meal from one of our great restaurants.
It's beautiful.
So he's ready, and I have this weight that's lifted off my shoulders, because I really feel like, Steinberg and the Master of Crows himself and his good friend Steve Hansen are really thinking about what our city needs.
I have a question.
Oh, can't wait for it.
Wasn't this next restaurant opening phase, didn't Governor Newsom say that we're not considering that for a county until there's been 2 weeks without a death?
Yes, which is why it hasn't been implemented here yet. But if we go to like next week, then we'll have made it, I think.
No, we won't, because we had a death on the 8th, on the 9th. So it's like we've only gone
1 week.
barely gone 5 days,
Yeah.
and they're already trying to
Yeah.
open it next week.
I think this is their plan for like how to do it when we get to our next 2 weeks, which I honestly is probably coming pretty soon. If it's not next week, it's in the next few.
But
based
the
on-
article said that they were by Teresa Clift again. Teresa just right and left and right
The
at the beat.
Sacramento Tea.
Yeah. The article, she actually had written that they were planning on asking the governor to open restaurants next week in our region. So that surprised me a little bit. I don't know,
because they're already
I
there's
think
a bunch
lot of counties are doing something similar. They're anticipating that they will meet the criteria by a certain date, and so they're trying to signal to people that that's their hope.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just, this is a very Sacramento thing for them to decide to start talking about as the thing to sort of reinforce like the "we got this" message out of the city.
We got this message. Oh, one of my favorite people has one of those signs in their window.
Yeah, that's so, whatever. I would love to have a meal that I didn't cook at some point soon. But the reason that I was interested in talking about this is because I wonder about the consequence on our neighbors experiencing homelessness, who have been by and large just abandoned by the governor and by the mayor,
and by the supervisors
and by the county supervisors, and all of a sudden, the streets that they have now called home in such a different way. Like, what I see is people who are really like, they're hunkering down in front of businesses that were once open. Now we're going to get the green flag for these folks to open up, and our elected officials have nothing planned to help them. And so I'm worried about what the engagement looks like with people living outside by business owners who don't really like them anyway, because they bring down the value of their businesses, right? Because people are afraid of folks experiencing homelessness and smells and behaviors and all of this bullshit. And also, what does that look like that we're deciding to sanction public spaces for business use, and we're not doing anything proactively to help move people who are living in those public spaces into protected shelter? I just think that it's a really complicated, well, it's actually not a fucking complicated issue. Bring people inside. Like, the COVID-19 response, or what is it called? The COVID-19 response team has brought in a total of 216 households and 274 individuals since they rolled out the those like medically supported isolation care centers, which are the trailers. And then
are those individuals worked into the household, or
no, separate from the households?
Okay,
as far as I know.
Because then I'd be interested to know how many people are in each household too.
Yeah, that is something that I am interested in that. I also, in the back of my mind, know that it's still not enough people, like,
right.
We're
you've said multiple times that the number, the point in time count number is well over 5,000. The number is probably closer to at least, double that in our county of people experiencing homelessness. So no matter how many people are in those households, unless it's like 8 or 9 people per household, then we're nowhere near where we need to be. Right.
Yeah. And this is the number of people served since what is time? Since April 8th is when they started this project, when this response team started putting people into those trailers and the motels, they've served 500 people. Like, that's not enough.
Which is like optimistically 8% of the homeless population in this county or something like that.
But it's definitely more than 5 because a household doesn't count as one person.
Okay.
That's
right. It's more than 5.
That's why I want to be
yeah.
like exact
right.
with our numbers here. Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't have that. They're not giving us we don't have a total number of individuals.
Okay.
So yeah, so
that's on them. They should be
correction.
providing us that. Yeah.
Right. So that's my bad. Correction is that it's serving more than 500 people, but still, I imagine. I mean, I know because my eyes work that people aren't being helped.
Right.
We still got people coming up for services every day where I work.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Is there a number people call? Do you have a number for them to call? And if yes, how often is that fruitful?
A number for people to call for what purpose? For,
shelter purposes, because they promised all of these shelter options at the beginning of the pandemic.
Well, so Sacramento Steps Forward is the organization that's overseeing this. They're not overseeing the whole thing. This is a partnership with Sacramento County, City of Sacramento, Sacramento Steps Forward, and the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency.
Okay.
But the people who are outside doing that outreach work are Sacramento Steps Forward navigators. So what I would say is that the call to action, if you want to, let folks know that you're pissed that they haven't sheltered more people, is really to get at Sac County, the city, and the city of Sac, because that's the elected,
right.
officials who are.
But my question was, it's like, okay, a woman comes to you at, you're a frontline service worker, and she's like, I need something tonight. I need to be somewhere tonight. Did Steps Forward offer you a number to call?
No, there isn't. There was actually never like a solid piece of communication that was like, here's the plan for how you get someone into these units. Just because we are out there and we know the outreach workers, we just call the outreach worker that's in our region, our district, and he's out there every day.
So the protocol is for the outreach worker to do the work,
to do an assessment. Yeah, and we talked about this before. That still requires that pretty lengthy intake process for the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS, and the VI SPDAT, which is the Vulnerability Index.
So it's the same process they've had forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it's really streamlined, and it's like super friendly for people. Like, it's bullshit, honestly. I can't. Like
started out saying it's bullshit.
At first I was like, will people read the sarcasm? Because I know Shannon pretty well, but then she just dropped all pretense.
Right. I was like,
yeah.
You were like, I can't. I don't have this to give today.
No, I don't. I've lost a lot of my giving attitude, and there wasn't a lot there.
Right. You're on day 4 of your work week right now. So just so people know, and I'm
feeling extra salty.
And and you want to help all these folks. And
your job is stressful when there's not a huge pandemic happening.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And this is like, we've got folks who are like, why can't I get inside? Like, where's the navigator? Like, why isn't he here to interview me? He was here yesterday. And it's like, well, he's out like helping, the people that were here before you. And well, when is he coming back? And it's just like, everyone has all these questions about how they can get inside. And we just, through this whole thing, have never really had clear answers. We're just doing the thing that as frontline workers in homeless services, we have learned to do really well, which is patch together a
Yeah.
plan. So yeah, it's frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating. And we're, this is one of those weeks where not only is there a fucking pandemic, but it also rained. And so you've got people who are living outside, incredibly vulnerable, fearful that they're going to get sick, and sleeping on the wet concrete.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the city is talking about farm to fork al fucking fresco.
Mm-hmm.
It's bullshit. There's so much bullshit.
I'm totally with you, Shannon, because it just feels like of all of the priorities right now in terms of things to begin to open back up, we have, calls to the domestic violence hotline are up. We have calls to suicide hotlines are up. And yet we're talking about opening up restaurants and not talking about when we can have gatherings of 5 people again so that people can begin to meet their emotional needs. Like if anything tells, and that's because that doesn't pay dividends, right?
Right.
Nobody makes money on that. But
right.
There's so many things along the way, just as an illustration of like what people need right now. And we're not focused on any of them. We're focused on the ones that are going to be profitable and that are going to, and it's like, we're missing the forest for the trees. And so I feel the same way about this entire story. It's like, so we're prioritizing how we can repurpose public space when it's convenient to us. But when we've been saying you need to repurpose how we use public space, nothing.
Right.
Here's where I think they're viewing it. It's, they know that people are stressed at home and that they may or may not be able to pay their bills. But their answer is not provide people the monetary relief that they need. We could end rent. We could end fucking mortgages. We could just do that. And then provide them with let's say CalFresh money, or provide them with literally just $2,000 a month or whatever. That's how you keep people safe and in their homes right now. But their answer is not that, because they're afraid to stand up to like an Elon fucking Musk, right? Where we should be taxing him to the fucking heavens. And if not that, taxing his head from his body. What we're actually doing is just kneeling to him, right?
Right. They let him do his thing.
Because our answer is, and the people who pay their fucking campaigns are saying, no, you need to let us start working again. You need to let me, as an interest of capital, put these people to work so that they can make me money, and so that I can actually give them a little bit of money so that they can sort of get by as they've always sort of gotten by.
Well, and the other thing too that does is it makes it so that if you're one of his employees and he's like, hey, come back to work, and you don't want to because you are worried about COVID, you're no longer eligible for unemployment anymore. So it puts you in.
Unless you were fired.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
It puts you in the situation.
If you're fired, you are, but if you were furloughed, you are not. And that's the real problem.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're viewing it again from a very neo-lib, classic California Democrat perspective.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
and again, these, and let me put it in the terms of like people who know like California politics communicators, Steve Maviglio Democrats are no different than Mike Madrid Republicans. They're all the same. And these are the ones who are running the show in this state. They care about the interests of capital more than they care about the interests of the worker.
Yeah, 100%.
Sorry, I think I took us off track.
No.
I mean, no, it's
It's
on
all,
track.
It's all
100%.
It's all tied in.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we're getting close to time, but the last thing I wanted to mention is, that I saw that the CEO of Twitter, Jack, recently said, they all call him Jack on Twitter. Jack Dorsey, I think his name is.
Yeah, that's right.
He recently said that effectively all of his employees, if they want, they can work from home indefinitely.
Yep.
And that's a really interesting thing to me. And that, I think, if you talk to business leaders throughout the state, that's sort of a new reality that they've been anticipating, that culturally we're going to become much more accepting of working from home, which, like, we always should have, right?
Yeah.
A bunch of the Silicon Valley companies are not just saying you can work from home forever, like Twitter, but a bunch of them, I think, like Facebook and Google and whatnot, have also been like, nobody has to come back before 2021.
Right.
We'll open the campuses when it's safe, but if you would rather work from home, you can for the foreseeable future. I like that. I think that is fantastic. I think it's a great silver lining, you know.
Absolutely.
I think it also gives us the opportunity, or at least, like, it sets up the space for us to start thinking about how we might use commercial real estate when people start working from home. So like, we've got, what's going to happen when we've got all these empty buildings? Can we start thinking about, like, in Sacramento, let's say, like, navigation centers, much like the ones that we see in San Francisco? Can we think about, you know, low income housing? Like, can we think about sheltering people in different ways? Like, how can we use that space so that we don't end up with a bunch of empty buildings and thousands of people dying because they're outside? Like,
yeah. And there will be more and more of this empty office space. Sacramento has had this empty space forever. And
totally.
We've sort of, I think a lot of us homeless advocates have been going around like, why don't we repurpose this? Like, it's just sitting here.
Including like a huge, like, abandoned building that runs all the way alongside the other side of the street from Cesar Chavez Park, which is where a lot of unhoused people sleep every night, even when it's fucking raining.
Yeah. So, like, we've got all of this infrastructure, and we've been asking this question, and the answer normally from people is like, well, it costs a bit to, you know, fit in new plumbing and blah, blah, blah. Fine. But I lived in Wisconsin, and Milwaukee has built entire neighborhoods from warehouses, entire neighborhoods of housing. You can do this with newer office buildings, probably more easily and less cost, you know, with less cost than those. And then, like, you know, I guarantee you, and yeah, honestly, maybe I'm wrong, but I will just put a stamp down now. This will cost less than the $500,000 per unit that, you know, places like LA are putting on for new low income housing.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Also, there is a way that stimulates the economy. We need, you know, people to be able to work construction jobs. We need, right? And so, like, in so doing, you also set people up to be able to make money in ways that are actually useful.
Right.
Totally.
Mm-hmm. Well, another big roadblock, I think, that needs to be addressed is speculators. You know, you've got Bay Area big companies just sitting on this commercial space in Sacramento because they assumed our values were going to go up and up and up. We got to start taxing them to shit. And no one's taking a stand to them in politics. I'm glad we've got somebody new at City Hall who might actually start, you know, setting this agenda. But, like, no one's doing that right now.
I mean, but it keeps getting demonstrated over and over again by cases like the Elon Musk one, right? That those guys control the government. Like, those guys can openly stand in defiance of the government, and the government will be like, okay.
Right.
You know,
I guess I'm not a land use person, but I'm always really curious, like, why we never execute eminent domain on the stuff that's, like, vacant and could be, you know, captured by government. Why it's always some strip mall that wants to take away grandma's house, but we can never, you know, we can't do it when there's, like, a vacant building sitting open, and instead we allow it to go to out-of-town speculators that then sit on it until they feel it's profitable and then can hike up the money. And it's like, a local government come in and say, oh, this space is up, yeah, we'll take it for the low price of whatever and do something with it.
Yeah,
it's like the spaces that are not owned by the city or that are sitting vacant and then have been sold and continue to sit vacant, that just feels like an entirely missed opportunity to me.
Yeah. And They have, I just increasingly feel like, I don't necessarily feel like they are quote unquote owned by these folks, but I do feel like when like an Elon Musk is like, do this or else, they sort of lay back on their belly like, okay, like you can open up again, because it doesn't affect them one way or the other. But like as far as this, like Flo, to your point about, eminent domain on this land, I just feel like these elected officials are from another time. And I mean, you look at their ages, they're all much older than we are. And this isn't even in their vernacular. This isn't how politics has worked in America. And it was fine for a long time because people were generally not hurting as badly as they are today. But now things are fucking bad. And now people need to act radically, and their politicians aren't responding in accordance to really what their needs are.
Yeah.
Well, Dave,
Oh,
I'm transitioning careers right now. I'm going from being well, first off, I should tell you guys, I am furloughed right now. I haven't been working, and I'm just going to come out clean with that, but that's not the purpose of this. What I'm looking for, I guess, Dave, what I'm really trying to get at, and this is a little awkward here to say this publicly, but your hair is magnificent.
Oh, thank you.
And if I'm going to acquire new skills like haircutting, which I feel like is a good skill for me to acquire now that we're going to come out of this thing and like a billion people are going to need to get their hair cut, I'm going to need to know the tips and tricks that get you into this amazing. Is this like can you qualify this as a bouffant? Is this a
Yeah, I don't know. I saw a video. Okay, so for listeners, no, I didn't get my hair cut.
It's a front pony.
I had to, I
it's
got
a unicorn horn.
I bought some hair
it's not
ties
a man bun
yesterday, and my hair is long enough that it's like landing just like in the middle of my face now, but like not long enough that I can do like a ponytail or a man bun or anything.
It's a man bun. It's like a man bun sprout. It's a sprout of a man.
Yeah, it's a man sprout, but a bun would need to see how Shannon's hair comes back over, right? Yeah, like you have to be able to take the ends of the hair and tuck it into the hairband in order for it to actually be a bun.
Hey, look, even the mightiest oak once was an acorn, Dave. And
I feel like this is
it has bun potential, but it's not yet there.
Definitely. I'm in my awkward acorn stage, and I'm glad we went the entire episode without mentioning it. So the viewers on YouTube are going to be like, what the fuck is with that dude?
It's fantastic look, and I love it. And it's inspired me. It's inspired me to choose my new career.
I love it. And like to that point, I think it's provided me a new skill set, because I've learned over the last 2 days just how the ins and outs of making a knot on the top of your head. It's not as easy as it might look. So, we're all kind of building out new skills, right? But
that's right.
The one skill that all of us have is being great hosts at Voices River City. And the only
tie that up
to do that is with the support of our listeners and viewers.
Right. Well, I mean, that's kind of what I was going to get at, was that I have been for the last couple of days Googling like Kempa great hair and like Kempa hair inspirational. And that I've found a couple of things online about, and I've heard it's all kind of tied into this Voices of River City thing. I'm wondering if you can kind of give me Voice River City. Is there like a place I can go to where all of that great content and your hair are all in one great location for me?
Yeah. So our centerpiece is voicesrivercity.com, and we've got 3 years of content from anything from, following the money of local elections to interviewing the keyboardist of Smash Mouth. And, we're very proud of that work. And that doesn't happen without our supporters. So if you want to support that work, it's patreon.com/voicesrivercity. We're on Twitter at Voices River City. We are on Facebook, Voices River City. We're on Instagram at Voices River City, which is always a lot of fun. Skylar picks the weirdest moments of the show to share with the people on there. And then, of course, I am on Twitter at Kempa.
Shut up and take my money.
I'm guillotine for you. That's guillotine, the number 4. Why are you? Wait, did I just cut somebody off?
Yeah, you cut off Tareen.
Tareen is in the background listening to the last episode, and then he has come in and quoted it for us.
I can't wait till he sees or hears about my top knot.
Yes,
yeah.
This is going to be great.
Yeah, be exciting for Tareen. Anyway, I'm guillotine for you.
Guillotine.
The letter 4 or the number 4?
It's the number 4.
Okay.
I will goof that up. One of the, it's coming. It's coming.
It is coming, yeah. I am Shan N.D. Stevens.
And I am Flojaune, Flojaune.
And that's us.
Yeah.
We cute.
Yeah.
How are we feeling about Be Brave, Bold Robot this week? Or is that like a yes or a no?
Question.
I mean, things have been quiet on the streets, but you just never know, right? I mean, it's all bubbling at the surface.
Usually that means that he's scheming on something, and there's something he's about to roll out something extra bad.
I think Dean's coming for us, and I think we got to be ready.
We're ready for you.
Fair
Dean.
enough.
Yeah, with like a battle folk song.
To the tune of Happy Birthday,
Yeah.
Voices River City edition.
Oof. We really nailed
Love
it.
it.
Yeah, great.
We
It was
did a
great
really
work,
good
guys.
job.
Great work all around.
So slow.
Yeah,
I love
it. Was great. I wish I would have had my tambourine.
All
that
right.
would have been
Well,
amazing.
once again, happy birthday to Flo's mom.
Happy birthday,
birthday,
Mom.
Happy Flo's mom.
Happy Flo's mom. As
Happy
Skylar
Flo's
said.
Happy
mom.
Flo's mom.
Sorry,
And,
guys.
happy Mother's Day to all of our moms.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
every mom
oh yeah,
out
that
there.
too. Happy birthday,
Um,
mom.
And yeah, I'm gonna go be a dog mom and walk Olive.
All right.
Nate has his hands under the door. So Tareen just comes in with quotes. Nate has his hands
Nate's
under
the
the door
cat.
like a cat.
Yeah.
Right now.
I love it. I love it.
Yet? Are you done yet?
All right, everybody. Well, hey, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy. And yeah, we'll see you guys on Tuesday.
Yeah, we will.
See you on Tuesday.
Okay, bye.
Hey guys, Skylar here. Hey, I wanted to pop back in. After thinking about this episode a little bit more, it occurred to me that when we were discussing Joe Biden earlier on in the episode, and I said something to the effect of, if they offer us things to vote for, I'll vote for them. I kind of glossed over Tara Reid and that whole aspect of the election. And that, when I'm thinking about it now, does not sit right with me at all. So I wanted to pop back in and let you guys know that speaking for myself, I believe Tara Reid. That is disqualifying on its face. And the point that I was trying to make is that I, as a progressive, can be brought in to the Democrat fold if offered a progressive agenda. It was not in any way meant to minimize or discount Tara Reid's story and her experience with Biden. So anyway, just wanted to clear that up because it is important to me, and I know that it's important to a lot of you. So anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys on Tuesday.